Now for the EFDD Group, Mr. Batten.
Welcome, Mr. Morawiecki, and good morning to this debate on Europe. Now, in order to understand the future, we need to look a bit at the past. In 1949 onwards, there were two models in Europe. On the western side of the Iron Curtain, we had the model of the Anglo-Saxon USA Western liberal democracy, where peace was kept by NATO. And on the eastern side, where you had the misfortune to be, you had the communist tyranny model. Now, the Germans lost the shooting war, but they did not lose their ambitions. Now, Nazi Germany left us a legacy. Back in, I think it was 1942, when the Germans thought that they were going to win the war, they wrote a plan for how they were going to govern their new empire. And it was called the Europäische Wirtschaftsgemeinschaft, the European Economic Community. They were going to have interest rates linked to the Reichsmark. They were going to have a common agricultural policy, a common industrial policy, a common policy for everything. That plan resurfaced in 1957 as the European Economic Community. And Mr. Dombrovskis there naively mentioned Walter Hallstein, the first president of the European Commission, who was a lawyer who had happily worked for the Nazis. Well, how have things progressed since? Well, of course, communism collapsed in the East, thank God, and your countries eventually asserted their freedom. In the West, what happened? Well, the Europäische Wirtschaftsgemeinschaft progressed into a plan for a United States of Europe. Where is Europe heading? Well, there are two Europes. There's the Europe that's part of the European Union, and there's the Europe that isn't. Let's talk about all of it. Those parts of the European Union, where are they heading? They're heading towards a United States of Europe. We see increased integration in everything. We've heard about this defence community. I think that's called an army, isn't it, Mr. Verhofstadt, I believe, in other countries. We see full economic, political and financial governments being aspired to. The European Union now governs almost every aspect of the citizen's life. Mr. Morawiecki, you mentioned the freedom gene. Well, that's very strong in the British, and that reasserted itself in 2016 in the vote to leave the European Union. The British people voted to reassert their freedom and their independence. Sadly, that project has not yet been realised. The British people chose freedom over domination in an undemocratic European Union. Now, Poland, you've been a member of the European Union for the last 14 years, and it was entirely understandable why you joined, along with the other Eastern European countries. After languishing under communist tyranny for decades, you needed the financial subsidies from the European Union, and you wanted the opportunities for your younger people to be able to work abroad, earn money, and improve their lives. All of those things are understandable. But now things are looking up for Poland. Your economy is picking up, and you have personally invited many Poles to come back from their migration abroad and rebuild your economy. But you've discovered that there's a price to pay for European Union membership. The EU requires you to accept migrants in untold numbers, which would change your country and your culture beyond recognition, as indeed it has already in many parts of Europe. Not surprisingly, you and your government are opposing that forced acceptance of irregular migrants and refugees. But you've been threatened by the EU. If you do not take the migrants, then you cannot have the money. And you have found that when you have outside interference in your country from such as multi-billionaire George Soros, who seeks to interfere in your nation's life, as he does in mine, then the EU tells you you cannot oppose him. You have learnt that if you sell your soul, eventually someone will come to claim it. You can have the rule of law, but you cannot have the rule of your own law. You can only have the rule of this place law. You will see in Poland, I believe, in the course of time, that it was a wise decision that the British people made to leave. I would ask you as we came to your assistance in 1939, that you in the Council come to our assistance. Please help us out with the utterly useless and incompetent Mrs May. Please help to facilitate our exit from the European Union in the Council and return the favour that we did you in 1939. Thank you.